John, if you were to ask me the question right now. Am I your
Paula,
best friend?
am I your best friend?
You are.
Wow. You said that on air. You can't take that back. This is recorded.
I can't take it back, but I wouldn't have said that years ago.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I asked you that question, if you would answer the same, and that's okay. But John, am I your best friend?
Well, before I answer that question, let me just go back and say, like, when we were dating, I never considered that.
Okay, the question that we are going to talk about on the podcast today is this. Should you be best friends with your partner or your spouse? And I would be remiss if I didn't have my own partner on the show. So welcome to the Paula Ferris Show, everybody. I'm your host, Paula, and my co-host, my adoring, loving husband, John, is joining the show. So we can talk all about this today.
Well, you said partner, you said husband, but you haven't said best friend yet. So we haven't answered the question, I guess.
We haven't. I guess that's what we would call a tease, right? So,
Yes, it
John,
is.
all month long, we're talking about friendship, and we're talking about it from a lot of different angles. We kicked off the series with a conversation with best-selling author Jenny Allen about the importance of deep, close friendships to our overall health. They're critical and how we can cultivate those friendships. And then last week we had my dear friend, Dan Harris, former co-anchor at
The
Good Morning
best.
America.
Dan's the best.
I miss that guy so much.
Yeah, me too.
So much. And we talked about why it's important to have friendships with people who aren't like us. And I think you can attest, John, we have a lot of friends, especially living in New York and Chicago, but we're both from the Midwest. We have a lot of friends who aren't like us. I think we're better people, more well-rounded because of it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we were forced to, with some of our jobs and our careers, to move into bigger cities and different locations, get out of our comfort zone. And I think it made us stronger and have a better understanding of that other people you can learn from and you can grow with them.
Yes. Only having friends who are like you is a recipe for anti-human growth. And that's not a recipe that any of us really want. So the question we're tackling today, should you be best friends with your partner, with your spouse? I have to say, John, I used to think no. But honestly, and I don't know if there's a definitive answer, a right or wrong. We're going to talk a lot about it today, the pros and cons. We're going to look at the history of relationships. But I will say that my feeling on this question, my feeling on this topic has changed. I don't think it has to be an either or. It can be an and. And by that, I mean, yes, I think that my partner, my spouse can be my best friend, but that doesn't mean that he's my only best friend or my only. So, but I would say, John, if you were to ask me the question right now, am I your best friend?
Am I your best friend?
You are.
Wow. You said that on air. You can't take that back. This is recorded.
I can't take it back, but I wouldn't have said that years ago.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I asked you that question, if you would answer the same, and that's okay. But John, am I your best friend?
Well, before I answer that question, let me just go back and say, like, when we were dating, I never considered that. Like, that just wasn't something I was like, I'm out there, I'm looking for somebody who's different than me, somebody who I connect with, who I'm vibe with, who I'm attracted to, somebody who I don't hate spending time with. But I think it has evolved over time into not just a friendship, but a best friendship. And it wasn't like that at the beginning. It definitely wasn't. I wasn't looking for that. You were my spouse. You were the girl in my life. But, I would have said my best friends were the ones I went and hung out with. I went and golfed with, the ones who I could talk about guy stuff with, sports. But over time, as we started to create a family, as we started to have a life together, yeah, 100% you were my best friend.
So say that again. Am I your best friend?
100% you are my best friend.
You know what movie line this evokes? Did we just become best friends?
Step Brothers. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I will say, though, you're not my only best friend.
No, not at all.
Okay.
And there are things that you can do that no one else can do to fill my bucket, to really speak into my life. And there are some things that other friends of mine can do that you can't do or shouldn't be doing. So I do believe very much what you're saying, that you do need to have a core group of friends, and your spouse should be one of those best friends if you want to have an ultimately healthy relationship.
And that's when I said an either or, I don't think it's an either or. I think it's an and. You're my best friend, but you're not my only best friend.
Correct.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing I thought was really interesting, John, because we always bring a little bit of research and data and history to the conversation. I just want to soak up the moment, though, for a second, that we're best friends.
Yeah. Let's go have a moment after this podcast. Maybe we can go take a nice walk down by the water and stare into each other's eyes.
I don't think that's what you mean by taking a moment, but we'll leave it at that. Okay, I thought what was really fascinating to me when I dug into this topic, an important note is that expecting the spouse to be both friend and lover is a relatively new concept. A lot of people think it's asking too much, but this is relatively new, John, because if you look historically, people didn't always pair up for love. Historically, people got married basically for transactional purposes, power alliance between families, or for financial purposes. That was not the case for either of our families. Really, until the mid 1800s, it was pragmatic. Like, are your basic needs met? Food and shelter. That's what marriage and relationships were about.
And even before that, it was about just procreating. I need a woman who can bring offspring for me as the man. Yeah. But we're going back like biblical times.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so after the pragmatic era, which we're talking about the mid 1800s, things really started to change with capitalism, industrialization, and then people started to make love matches. Ooh. And that would happen between the mid 1800s and even up until like the 1960s. People call that the love-based era, right? In which the primary relationship functions were about love and companionship. But since then, we're now in what's called the self-expressive era, in which marriage is not only about love, but it's also about personal growth. So we are in the self-expressive love era. We're not in the pragmatic era anymore. We're not in the love-based era. We are in the self-expressive era, which means we want love and we want somebody that helps us with our own personal growth. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. Like, this isn't how it's always been.
Yeah, that is interesting. And speaking of this current era, since I utilize ChatGPT at least 2 to 3 times every day, I figured I would ask ChatGPT that question. Should a husband and wife be best friends? And Paula, would you like to know what ChatGPT said about that?
Have you been doing that during this conversation?
Yeah, I did that during this conversation.
What did ChatGPT say about this?
So reasons it can be beneficial: emotional intimacy, trust and loyalty, fun and enjoyment, and conflict resolution. Those were some benefits.
Okay.
Here were a couple reasons why it might not work. Different social needs. Like, I love to golf. That's not really your thing. So unrealistic. Unrealistic expectations. Sometimes when you become too friendly with somebody, there's that loss of romance and that spark or polarity. So those were some reasons why it might not work. But all in all, the final thought is it's less about labels like best friends and more about connection. If you're supporting each other, enjoying each other's company, growing together, and facing life as a team, call it what you want. It's a strong marriage. So that's what artificial intelligence says about whether husbands and wives.
That's what AI says about connection.
Yes, that's what it says about connection.
Irony in that. Thank you, Dr. Kruger.
You're
felt
welcome.
like I should call either Professor Kruger or Dr. Kruger, or Dr. John, if you'd prefer that. Yeah, because I think, marriage is forever. And, you fall in love, romantic love only lasts so long. Not that I'm not like romantically in love with you, but like at this point, love's a choice.
Are we not keeping the heat, baby?
Well, we're keeping the heat. We're trying to keep things spicy, but it takes effort.
Yes.
By the way, we did a whole podcast on that a couple months ago. We'll link to it in the show notes. But I like this quote from a therapist. He said, the problem is that marriage is forever. You fall in love, you get married. Once the passion fades, then you're stuck. For a long-term relationship, friendship is a key ingredient. And in contrast to romantic love, which even philosophers characterized as a desire to possess the other person, a friendship-based relationship can have a lot of advantages, which you just brought up per ChatGPT. Now, John, I also sought some advice from ChatGPT, but I also went to some reliable sources like the New York Times and some other articles, and I put my own list together about the pros and cons of your partner or your spouse being your best friend.
Oh, let's hear them.
we're going to go through these and we're going to unpack them. But I'm so impressed that you already did your own research. Like that never, that's not a knock on you, but like usually I just ask you to show up to these conversations.
That's
The fact that you're invested, that's how committed you are to our listeners, John.
yes. I took time while you were talking and I searched ChatGPT.
All right. Okay. So pros and cons, or we'll call them benefits and downsides. The first pro is respecting your other interests. Okay. So respecting the other person's freedom and interest in activities outside of the relationship. That's a pro to being deep friends with your partner. Okay. And I think we're not looking for the other person to fulfill all of our needs. And I think you do a good job.
Yeah. And I think we need to support those things, even if we don't like it. There's a lot of things that I know you really enjoy doing. And if I said, don't do that because I want you to do something with me, you're going to probably start resenting me and you're not going to be able to be as happy because you don't have that outlet that I know you need and that you want, and vice versa. So you need to support other people's interests, even if it's something that you don't like. If you guys like to do everything and you spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's a recipe for disaster in a marriage.
Yeah. I think you and I will both admit we can't be around each other for prolonged periods of time without totally getting annoyed with one another.
No, that was one of the things I remember telling my parents when I was dating you. I was like, you know what I love about Paula? I don't have to see her for a couple days, and she's cool with that, and so am I. Like, I like that she has her thing and that I can give her space and she gives me space. I can't have somebody that's smothering me. That won't work.
Yeah, I need space too, and I think we're both similarly wired that way. Okay, so the first benefit of being deep friends or best friends with your partner is respecting the other person's interests. We both have a healthy level of respect. The other one is we're typically happier and more satisfied. Researchers have found that those who say they've married their best friend are more likely to be happy and more satisfied with their life. I think we would both say that we're happy. We're very satisfied with our lives. That doesn't mean that it's not a show half the time, that life isn't crazy, that we don't get at each other's throat. So, but typically we're happier and more satisfied. The third point, this is interesting, John. It is good for your physical health to be
I believe that.
with your spouse. According to...
Because there are some things that husbands and wives do that are extremely physical together. Like take long walks, like work out together like we did earlier today. Like, what were you thinking?
Take long walks. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. Very long, lengthy walks.
Yes.
For long periods of time where we're both exhausted afterwards. Okay, but according to research, a main contributor to a person's mental and physical health is how supported one feels in the relationship. There's this quote from a therapist who said, for a happier relationship, you want both people in the relationship to feel like the other person knows the real them, how to support them in a way they prefer, the situations where they would need support without being asked. That's what we might consider a best friend, someone who can kind of figure out things without being asked. Listen to this. This was crazy. People who feel really supported and loved by a partner can heal from surgery 6 weeks faster. That's probably the most random stat I've ever heard. Like they're actually tracking people who've had surgery alongside those who are best friends with their partner, and they're healing 6 weeks faster. But I guess it goes to show, underscores the importance of physical health.
Yeah, you said something that was interesting, knows the real you. And I do believe, and I've had friends who I don't feel like they're fully open and honest and can be their true self around their spouse.
Give me an example of that. Are you talking about they can't poop in front of their spouse?
No. Like there's certain things about them that they don't want to talk about. They don't want to express. They don't want to be this type of person. They don't like my humor. My humor is this. And so if I'm always joking, they just don't like it. So I can't truly be that type of person, or I'm really into this activity, or I want to talk about these deeper things, but my wife or my husband doesn't really want those things. So if you can't be your real true self, that has just got to be exhausting, and it's probably extremely negative to your physical health.
Well, and I think to your overall connection with
your connection, your emotional state.
I love your sense of humor, and no, I don't love all of your interests, but I do feel like I can be my true self, for better or for worse. You're getting it.
And I think that has evolved over time too. We have given each other more of ourselves after 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. It's just like, all right, this is me. Like, take it or leave it.
And we're going on 25 years of marriage.
It's amazing.
Which is almost impossible because we're only 35 years old.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we got married in elementary. It's
I know,
wild.
elementary school. Oh my gosh, no. But 25 years of marriage. I'm turning
Yeah.
50 this
Yeah.
year. You're turning 50 next year.
Mhm.
Lots of milestones. Okay, so we've listed 3 benefits: respecting the other person's interests, happier and more satisfied. It's good for your health. Number 4, the 4th benefit of being best friends with your spouse is it leads to enhanced emotional intimacy. When spouses are also best friends, they often share a deeper level of emotional intimacy, leading to stronger communication, understanding, and you would probably add longer walks, right?
Longer walks, more frequent walks.
More exhausting walks,
Exactly.
more vigorous walks
Vigorous. Yes.
is the key word. But I do think like the emotional intimacy isn't just physical intimacy. People joke, intimacy starts, the way to his heart is through his stomach, or the way to her heart is, by helping out, or, doing your fair share around the home. Like emotional intimacy is so key. And whatever the pathway that leads, but it starts with emotional intimacy for me, at least, and
Yeah.
leads to the physical
Yeah.
intimacy. And
I feel like you and I were intimate this morning, and it had nothing to do sexually. Like, example, there was some things going on in my life that I shared with you, and the way you listened and consoled me and started talking about certain ideas, the ways we could fix that, even prayed with me, that felt like an intimate moment. And there was nothing sexual about that moment, but that was an intimacy that I was real with you. I was vulnerable with you. And then you were able to, help me. And I thank you for that, baby.
oh, thank you. Yeah, and intimacy is, I think we've over-sexualized our culture
totally.
too. Intimacy isn't just sex. Like intimacy is those moments where your partner shows up. Like when mom passed away, you just laying there crying with me, holding me, and I didn't have anything to say. But that can, like, there's a lot of different layers and levels and looks to intimacy. Okay, and the final benefit, we said respecting the other person's interests, happier and more satisfied. It's good for your health, enhanced emotional intimacy. The 5th benefit of being best friends with your spouse or your partner is stronger resilience. Friendship can provide the resilience that's needed to navigate the challenges of life, making the relationship more able to withstand difficult times. And I think that's true. Like, resilience is key. It's not how many times you get knocked down in the relationship, but how many times you pick yourself back up. And I think we have a lot of commonalities that bond us together, but I think it's made us stronger through those times when we were separated, when we wanted to walk away, when things got really hard, through the moves, through the changes, through the job loss, through the loss of parents, all of it. So stronger resilience.
And it's a lot easier to be resilient when you know you have a partner who's there with you and supports you. And when you get like knocked down, like you just said, you don't have to get up by yourself. You got somebody like myself who's reaching down, picking you up, and vice versa. It's very important. It's biblical, in fact.
It is. I need to hear it one more time. I'm your best friend.
You are 100% my best friend.
One of them. Right? But one of the best friends.
One of them.
Yes. One of them. Okay. The downsides to being best friends, because, we got to balance the conversation. The downsides to being best friends with your partner, number 1, is that you withdraw from your other social networks. There's a lot of research that shows that when people get into relationships, they tend to withdraw from their other social networks. This is one thing that, you look at some couples and their spouse or significant other, their partner is their world, their everything, and they don't have any other friends. That's not healthy. This happens a lot. I remember there, some friends in college, every time they break up with somebody, they'd come back to the friend group. And then when they got with another guy, bye, see ya. That's not healthy.
Let me just tell you, if that's you, you are annoying. You are very annoying to your friends. You're annoying to me if all you want to be around is your spouse. Have a life outside of your spouse. It will help you be a better spouse. I promise you.
And that doesn't mean that you do things in the dark or do things in secret. You
No.
can share those with your spouse, but it is important. And that's why the downside, again, the number 2 downside is the need for separate relationships and friendships, because there may be situations where you actually need somebody else to lean on and your partner might not be fit for the job. I read an example. One person had a medical condition like cancer, and it's important for the person who's becoming the caretaker to also have someone else to rely on to talk about the changing dynamics and get support. We need other people to challenge us, to help us see ourselves and become aware of possibilities we haven't even thought of on our own. And it went on to say, while it's important to have someone be close and feel like your best friend, that's not to say they should be your only friend or only person. So there's that need for separate friendships. One person can't fulfill all of your needs. And especially in a situation like maybe cancer or something like that, caretaker, that's a lot of burden for one person to carry, right?
Correct.
And that can put a lot of stress and strain on the relationship as well. So the other downside, the third downside, is the potential for over-reliance on that relationship, putting all your emotional needs, all your needs and friendship needs into one basket. It creates a fragile dynamic where the relationship becomes overly dependent on that person.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of these downsides are very similar, but like one person, and this goes to say, like, even in your, like my girlfriends, there's not one friend that checks every box that's going to fulfill all of my friendship needs. And I'm not going to fulfill all of my friends' friendship needs, just one person. And so you can tend to rely too much on your partner, too much on your spouse, and that causes cracks.
Yeah. You can't be all things to all people. And it's good to surround yourself with a bunch of different people who can speak into your life in different ways, and you can speak into their lives in different ways. I think there's just that word balance, having a healthy balance.
And then the last downside was the risk of loneliness. Like, what happens if the relationship ends or they pass away, even? Not just if you break up or, you split up or you get divorced, but what happens when the relationship ends? Having only one best friend leads to loneliness and a lack of other meaningful connections.
I will say one thing. You're not my only best friend. So if you do leave or pass away, I'll be all right. I'll figure it out, okay?
I was really worried about you.
Yeah, I'm sure you were.
Thank you for sharing that with me, because the moment you said that I'm your best friend, that's all I've been thinking about is what happens if something happens to me. Will John make it? Now I know.
Yeah, I shared that for you because I knew that's what you were thinking.
I mean,
I'll be good.
That's thinking, I'll be all right without you.
Oh, we're singing. Great.
I don't want to get slapped with royalty fees, so I'm just going to stop singing.
Okay.
But other things to keep in mind. So we went over the pros and the cons, and we kind of went over the evolution of why we got into relationships. It started, for pragmatic, financial, power alliances. I mean, our families could have had a pretty significant power alliance, John, if that's why we were getting together. Don't you think? The Lebanese and the Germans.
Yeah.
My family being Lebanese, your family being German. I'm sure there could have been some sort of political power alliance there.
A lot of influence.
But we've gone over like how things have changed and how people think about relationships with their spouse and how that whole mindset has changed, the pros and cons. But a couple of other things to keep in mind. I think it's, just to level set. It is very important, regardless of whether your partner and your spouse is your best friend. It's important to like your partner.
Yes. Because you won't always love them.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah.
I feel like I like you.
Ooh,
I
yeah, girl.
like.
No, I like hearing that.
You like hearing that? I like you as a person. Like, you're funny and I don't know, you just make me laugh, but I like you as a human being. I love you. I choose to love you, but I just like you.
Thank you.
And I think you like me too. You haven't said it yet, so I'm not really sure. I mean, now I'm getting insecure. I mean, do you like me?
Of course, baby. I like you. I would not have been with you for 25 years. I would not be able to tolerate somebody I don't like for this long. So let's just put it on the record. I 100% like you.
Thank you. I feel like we're having a middle school conversation right now. Check yes or no.
Yeah.
Check the box if you like me. No, but it's so important to like your partner and like your spouse. And you're not going to change them, by the way. So that's one thing that I really want to stress. And the other thing is having realistic expectations of what they're going to bring to the relationship. They don't and shouldn't fulfill all of your needs. It is not healthy. And there's got to be some sort of glue, like shared values, something that keeps you all together. It doesn't always have to be friendship, but one therapist said, I think we put so many expectations and responsibilities on our partners, but just saying, I'm not here to be everything and all things to you. And it's not healthy. It's not realistic.
Yeah, it's good.
It's a terrible standard to set. So, John, I just want to say, I'm not here to be everything and all things to you. Are you okay with that?
I don't want you to be everything and all things to me. So I'm good with that.
I know you've always been good with that. You've been real good with that. So, no, but I think that's really important to underscore. So I think the conclusion for me is your partner can be your best friend. I don't know if I would say should be. I think that's
Yeah.
a personal choice. It's not imperative, but regardless of whether or not your partner is your best friend, you're my best friend, John. But I'm not looking to you for all of my needs. I have other girlfriends that I would also say are my best friends as well.
And I would encourage couples, maybe you look at your partner, you're like, yeah, you're not my best friend. That's okay. It may happen over time. Let it evolve. Let it happen naturally. Because if you would have asked me this in our first 5 years, my answer probably would have been different. Just going through so many shared experiences, starting a family, careers, moves. There's just been a lot of that we've gone through together that has brought us closer. And I think those bonds, those highs, those lows, that has made us best friends.
Yeah, yeah. I think too, what I've learned in this series is because I do think we are in the midst of a loneliness epidemic. We're more connected, but more disconnected. We don't feel like we have those deep, close friendships. We feel like we have a lot of surface acquaintances. One thing I learned in that first conversation, if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it. It was the first episode of the month with Jenny Allen, talking about why it's important to have deep, close friendships and how to cultivate those. Because I hear from so many, especially women, that life gets busy. A lot of us, working moms, working parents, it's just so hard to cultivate those relationships. But it is imperative to our health to have deep, close friendships that aren't your partner and aren't your spouse, that you can rely on and will show up for you. Jenny said that you need 3 to 5 deep, close friends. And the way that you cultivate that network, you can have up to 150 outer circle friends, what we would call acquaintances, John. So I have a lot of acquaintances, and I think I mistook a lot of them for close friends. They're not. My deep close friends, 3 to 5, my inner circle. There's 3 things that we need out of our inner circle. The first thing is availability. Can they show up? Proximity matters. Number 2, are they humble? Do they always have to be right, or can they work through the conflict? And then number 3, vulnerable. Can they be vulnerable with you and talk about things? Like, can you also be vulnerable with them? Can they show up during your cry and not after, the cry and the crisis? But I think we have to initiate that. Jenny said something that really stood out to me. She said, we can either initiate or we can be lonely. And we're going to get hurt regardless with friendships. Like, there's no one person you're going to hurt. You've hurt me multiple times. I'm going to hurt you. People hurt one another because we're fallen and depraved, and we're people. We're humans. So you're going to be hurt and you've got to initiate. But I think just having that level setting conversation, the importance of deep friendships, and you have to initiate, you have to cultivate it. It is the most important thing that we can do to our overall health, is have deep, close friendships. And you have a couple of guy friends that I think that they're available.
I do.
They're humble.
Yeah.
And they're vulnerable. I don't know if they would say you're humble, John, but
humble in my own way.
I think I'm humble, right?
Yeah, of course. Just in my own humble way.
And I think it's important for guys too, that example to their kids. Do you have deep, close friends?
Yeah.
It's like your kids are looking at you too. And so, I think our culture, it's hard for guys to get vulnerable, isn't it? But I think it's getting easier.
It is, and I think it just takes time. And I think you need to understand just the importance of what can be gained. A lot of times you're like, oh, no, I'm not. I'm rough. I'm tough. Why would I be vulnerable with somebody? But when you find out what's on the other side of that vulnerability, that connection, that ability to grow, then it's a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's not a sign of weakness.
No, not at all. No.
Vulnerable to share. I think it's so important that we get vulnerable with you do not have to get vulnerable with your outer circle or your acquaintances.
No,
those 3 to 5
just your core.
People, yes, you need to show up during the cry and the crisis, not when you pulled yourself back together. That's hard for me. Vulnerability can be a little hard for me. I don't like people to see me cry. And I feel like I've cried more this year than I have in my whole life. I'm going to cry talking about crying. There's just a lot going on. The loss of, my parents, and, Caroline's getting ready to go off to college. And there's just been a lot of heavy and hard things, having teenagers.
Yeah. Me telling you I'm your best friend, I know that made me cry.
That's a different type of tears.
Yeah. Tears of joy.
All the hormones and perimenopause and crap that we're going through like all at once. But anyway, yeah, I hope y'all have listened to all of these conversations. I also, John, I want to link, we did an episode, I think a couple months ago, about how to keep it spicy with your partner. And I think we did that earlier in the year because we try to keep it spicy. We try to go for those long walks.
Yes.
You know,
vigorous, frequent.
Yes. Because, like keeping it spicy, and the ways to do it, it's not just through physical acts. It's everything else. It's the emotional, spiritual, mental component and connection, which lead to all forms of intimacy, right? But as we wrap this series next week, speaking of, my mom and passing, is something that I've wrestled with is, do you have to be friends with your family? And we're going to have Professor Arthur Brooks. He's a Harvard professor. I have tried to get him on the podcast for so long, and I'm so excited that it's finally working out. But he's going to come on the show to talk about whether or not, is it imperative to our health to be friends with our family? Should we be friends with our family? Because I know a lot of us, we're blood related, but things end there. It's something that I've wrestled with too. So, especially in the wake of my passing, it's I feel like she, held a lot of us together, our siblings together and the cousins and everything. So how much of an effort do you need to put in? And John, this is something that you struggled with too. How much effort do you put in with your family?
Yeah.
And should you be friends with your family?
Yeah, your extended family, and then you're trying to create your family, which is you and the kids. There's a lot. And how do you prioritize those?
So I'm excited to kind of put an exclamation point on the series with Dr. Brooks. And then we're taking the month of July completely off. We are going dark for the entire month. I need to rest. We both need to rest.
Yeah.
I'm getting therapy to try to navigate the grief of losing mom. And like I said earlier, it's been a tough year, and I know a lot of you feel the same. And that's one more reason why we need deep, close friends. Yeah. And I'm learning how to cultivate those and put myself out there. And I think we have, even in the last year, John, I think we have really developed some really deep, close friends, especially in the area people we didn't even know a couple of years ago.
Exactly.
So, and helping us carry us through it. So see you next week with Dr. Brooks. And John, do you want to go for a walk?
Yeah, let's go for a walk. Anytime, baby girl. Anytime.
Did we just become best friends?
I think we did.
I think we did. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll keep talking about it. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
I know you guys thought you were done with me, but not quite yet. I have one more thing to tell you about. If you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, don't forget to subscribe to the show. I don't want you to miss a single beat or a single conversation. And remember, my DMs are always open. Tell me what you want to talk about.